Hello, welcome back to IT Landy Nugget courses. For today, we will be covering Azure in depth, what we have, how it works, and what you need to deploy, and the primary, let's say, pillars around Azure. And then you can pick and choose which area might be convenient for you. So, without further ado, let's we jump into the first things. Within Azure, at the moment, Microsoft they improved, and you can see the regions scattered everywhere and next sessions, and we cover these in more details. We will do the same for GCP and AWS and Hirako as well. Well, at the moment, for this course, we will do only Azure, and you can see Microsoft they keep improving the regions and the HA you got 40 40 primary I will say like data centers or clusters, and you can see the DA across like different countries they introduced, and this list keep growing more and more and more. Okay, which means the copy of when they offer you like a disaster recovery, GA, and so on will be covered as part of the service they offer. However, some of the regions, for example, Switzerland, the north, I think it is improving, and you can call it a proper like data centers, like a geolocation. But I think West Switzerland is not there yet. Depend on what component and resource you will be consuming. We will cover this in more details, but just to let you know, based on real experience. So with on-premise or private cloud, you provision and manage data access, application, runtime, OS, virtual machine, compute, networking, storage. And the same thing apply into like the cloud module. It's exactly the same. However, with the cloud module, what we have a SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. So infrastructure or platform as a service or software as a service. Now let's remap what we used to do with the cloud module. I mean, by the way, this is applicable to all public cloud as well, yeah? So what we have with the SaaS basically what we will be managing. If you remember on the red, the first column, which is the on-premise, it's our responsibility basically from the lower storage all the way to the upper, which is data and access, yeah, all red. Now, how we map this one into the cloud? And if we do a SaaS, data and access, it is our responsibility. Same thing applied to infrastructure or platform. So anything to do with data, it is our responsibility. We move on to the next application, basically hosting. Yes, with the SaaS, we don't host it ourselves. We consume something hosted by the vendor, the provider. It could be Microsoft, could be all these third-party tools are available. However, we only consume it, we pay for it basically. If we go to the PaaS, no, we host it. Same thing with the infrastructure. I might have an AKS, which means I need to host my application like Java or something else. And same thing apply if I do it on VM or, any other like infrastructure services. If I go to the runtime basically it is like the agent you install or runtime SDKs or whatever related to runtime. And in a scenario where we use the infrastructure, then that will be our responsibility because we have to, let's we talk about VMs, for example, we have to spin the VMs, we have to install the agents on the VMs to run certain activities like maybe deployment for DevOps, or it could be like a tool. But in the PaaS and SaaS, no, it's maintained by the provider. In this scenario, it's Microsoft. Same thing applied to the OS. Like if I host a VM, I need to install operating system on it, like Linux or Windows or any others. Then that will be my responsibility if I host it, which is infrastructure. If it's PaaS and SaaS, then it will be the vendor. And same thing applied to the virtual machine, which means the back end, again, SaaS and PaaS by the vendor as we look after the virtual machine. Now, the rest of the compute, network, and storage all will be maintained by the provider. You pay for it. Give an example, the hardware behind the scenes, it is their responsibility, not our responsibility. Same thing applied to the network and the storage. Yeah. Cloud services you provision, vendor manage the physical fabric and the host, and the same thing applied to 365 and so on. Hopefully, this explained to you where your responsibility will be laid under which module, let's we call it. Yeah. This is very crucial so you can understand if you have compliance requirements or you have any other requirement. Now we move on next. How this, data access, application runtime, OS networking will look like within the architecture of Azure. And this is very basic platform as surface here. We have the portal, AD, automation, key vault, storage, VMs, and then we have the hybrid operation like backup, operational, import, export, site recovery, Azure AD Connect, and we have the app services, compute services. I'm not going to read through them, but it's here for you. You can explore and educate yourself. But just to give you an example, where the infrastructure surface will cover, like from Windows, Linux, and containers, we got storage, either Blob, Azure Premium, or we got networking. Yeah, this is how it look like. And this is not all the tools. You are aware, like more and more keep getting added every, like I'll say, a few weeks, depend on the roadmap from Microsoft. Now, next is responsibility. So we mentioned earlier how and when and how and what is it. Now responsibility. If you look at this one, on-premise, PaaS, SaaS, and IaaS, yeah, or infrastructure as a service. Responsibility always retained by the customer. What is retained by us? Client endpoint, account and access management, data govern, and right management. Basically, anything to do with the upper layer. Yeah? Now, if I move on to identity, application, network control, OS, you can see the shared services between the on-premise and infrastructure, our responsibility, and between us and the provider will be, like a PaaS, and purely SaaS is the vendor. Yeah. Then that will be various, like it is between us and the vendor. And then the last part is the physical host, physical network, physical data center. That will be the vendor, which is Microsoft. Yeah, look at the on-premise us, cloud it is the vendor. This is really important so you can understand why and how they maintain and what they will be doing. Next, the account management. This is really crucial. We start with the org, then we go down to the department, logical, and then account, and then subscription. So like organization, we have business units, and then account, individual like organization unit, part of that business. And then we go to the subscription like prod, tier one, tier two, and so on. It's hierarchy, and something like this will look like, yeah? This is how they organize it, Microsoft. We start with the subscription, management, we go there like sandbox, dev, test, prod, non-prod, and then we move to identity management, Bob, and dot on Microsoft or Hotmail, BTC. You subscribe, and then you go there on Microsoft.com. This is the domain which will be used. So this is the format and the name. It's not on Windows AD or Windows pre 2000. And then this is the you know uh, relationship between multi and single tenant. You can see Bob, Lucas, Adam, James, whatever it is, yeah, and the relationship with Azure AD and Azure subscription and the directory itself. This is one-to-one relationship, and you go like one-to-many relationship as well. Yeah, Microsoft account, and you go the work and school account. In this scenario, you will have like your domain, and you can have multiple directory associated with it, which we call it work school account, and you can use it as a single point of identity. Yeah. Then we move on to a structure wise. So what we have Azure AD. Under Azure AD, what we do, we have subscriptions. Under the subscriptions, we have a resource group, logical, organized, let's say segregation. And under each resource group, what we have the resource. We arrange them that way. So we can apply like RBAC and so on. Then we move on to the last part, which is, the RBAC. We divided the AD into subscriptions, resource groups, and resource. Then what we do here, we apply RBAC to give permission to users or groups built-in basic roles, owner, contributor, reader. These are built-in, or you can customize based on your need, and you can control based on the resource groups or define specific action or create custom rules, which is very crucial for the Azure AD, like privileged identity management, access management, especially when you have so many subscriptions, different division, different team, then you will need to continue managing, controlling who, how they can access and prevent denial of attack or issues. And the last part, you got locks, where you can apply to the resource groups to prevent changes and deletion from even admins. This is all what I had for you for the first part, which covers Azure. Next, what we will be doing, we can deep dive into the second part, which is around, Azure ARM and ARM template, how we can deploy. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.